Welcome to First Responder Friday. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm your host for the program today, and I'm so glad you decided to join us today, whether you're watching from on Facebook or on YouTube or perhaps even on Twitter via Periscope. Thank you for joining us. And if you would be so kind as to leave a comment below as to where you're from, maybe what agency you're with, if you're a first responder agency, let us know about you and about where you're coming from, where you're watching from. We would love to know that. And if you have a question for our guest as we get into the interview, please leave it in the comments below as well. I'd really appreciate it. So as I said, I'm Conrad Weaver, and I am the host for this show, and I'm also the producer and director of our documentary film PTSD 911. And just a little bit about that film. Our goal is to tell the story about first responders who are dealing with post-traumatic stress and the issues surrounding that. And we have three goals. We want to raise awareness and support for our first responders. We believe that the general public needs to know what our first responders are going through, and that we as citizens need to help encourage our city, state, and government leaders to allocate more resources to help train and equip first responders to deal with and to heal from the traumas that they face. And that's one of our goals. Our second goal is to smash the stigma of PTSD. We want to help first responders realize that it's okay to raise your hand and ask for help, and it's okay to not be okay, and that there is help available. We want people to know that. There's lots of organizations that are helping first responders, and you'll meet one of those today. Our third goal and final goal is to inspire change at the agency level. There are so many agencies who are still not doing things right. They're not proactive in helping first responders and helping their members, and that needs to change. And so if you want to help us reach these goals, there's several ways you can do to help us. One, you can help us by making a donation to our campaign. We've raised a little over $7,000 so far for this film, and so many of you have made donations, and we're so grateful. From $10 to $1,000 and everything in between, people have made donations, and we're grateful for that. But we have a long way to go to raise funds. And also, if maybe you don't have the money right now to raise to share with us, but maybe your organization does, and you want to commit to getting behind us, you can reach out to me directly at conrad@conjostudios.com. I'd be happy to talk about that. Or if you say, hey, I just want to go on your website and make a donation, you can do that. And you can go right to our website, not that one, but this one, Trauma Behind. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself here. So go to ptsd911movie.com and click on the Honor a First Responder button right there, and you'll go to our funding page where you can make several different types of donations. Please go to that and make a donation today. We'd really appreciate it. It'll make a big difference in helping us get this film made and produced. You know, today we have a very special guest. We have really, I consider Chris a hero first responder. Chris Fields is a retired major from the Oklahoma City Fire Department. He was there for 31 years, and he's best known for an iconic photo that was captured during the Oklahoma City bombing. And that photo went around the world. It ended up winning a Pulitzer Prize for the photographer. And today we have Chris, that firefighter, right here with us in the studio. Well, he's actually not in my studio, but he's in a place in Texas. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Conrad. Thanks for having me, and welcome to all your viewers. It's an honor to be on here.
Well, Chris, tell me, so you're from Oklahoma, but today you're in Texas. What are you doing in Texas right now?
I'm down here with a group that me and three other first responders have formed called Trauma Behind the Badge. We're down here with some other organizations just to talk about peer support and to take part in a bridge walk tomorrow that they're renaming a bridge. It's called Honor Bridge for first responders, military, and all that have lost their life to suicide.
Yeah,
So,
it's a growing issue around the country, as we all know, and thank you for doing what you're doing. But let's get back and let's get into your story, Chris. What got you involved, and what made you decide as a young man to go into firefighting?
well, it's kind of the kid I grew up with. My best friend's growing up. He was a preacher's kid, and the church we went to, and his dad was also the chaplain of the Oklahoma City Fire Department. And it was something I always, when I would stay with him, and on the weekends, and we'd go to the fire stations and stuff and visit. It was just cool to see the brotherhood and the family atmosphere they had. It was and then the respect they got from the public and what they were doing, and I don't know, just always appealed to me. And and then a lot of the church we were going to, a lot of the firefighters went to that church, and they were my mentors in church programs. And it was, really a great experience when I got on that one of my mentors from the church was also a mentor on the fire department.
Hmm. So you were a firefighter for how long before the events of April 19th?
I was been on 10 years. I was hired in 1985. And of course, the bombing was 1995. So I was right at 10 years on the job.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to dive right into that. What happened that day? What was your experience?
It's it was just a regular spring day in Oklahoma. I got to work that morning and on a Wednesday, and we were just doing our normal station duties, routine in the morning. Some guys were out mowing and taking care of the station, and then we heard a blast, felt it actually, and went outside to see what it was. We thought maybe a train had derailed. There's tracks right by the station. We looked back to the to the south and saw the large plume of smoke, and just immediately self dispatched all three of our rigs from that station. And we got within probably 10 blocks. We were 17 blocks away. My station was at 22nd Street, and the Murrah building was on 5th Street. So we were 17 blocks away. But as we got closer, like 10 blocks away, we started seeing storefront glass, windows blown out, and people coming out in a daze, like what the hell's going on?
Hmm.
And that's that was kind of the feeling all day long, really. When we first got there, we set up a little triage and treated some walking wounded, flying glass and flying debris injuries. And, it was probably 10 or 15 minutes into the incident before we really got a first look at the building. And I know we kept moving and kept doing our job, but you felt like you were just standing there with um, your mouth gaped open looking at that building. And I always say this, and it's not to take lightly the 168 victims, but and every life that lost and all the injuries are tragic. But if you would have asked me right then or told me right then, there's only going to be 168 fatalities looking at a 9-story building pancaked down on top of each other at 9 o'clock in the morning, when everybody's there, had been there since 8 in the morning. If you'd have told me there was only going to be 168, uh, I, there's no way I would believe it. So, that's one of the, not lack of a better term, a minor miracle that did come out of that day, that there
Hmm.
was not a larger loss of life.
Hmm. So as a firefighter, first responder, what's the first thing you do when you arrive at a scene like that?
Well, like I said, for us, we set up a triage across from the Murrah building. There was a YMCA daycare separate from the daycare that was in the Murrah building, but there was a YMCA daycare, and there was people coming out of there, children with, like say, injuries, flying glass and debris injuries, walking wounded that we set up there and treat, and we just kind of, try to assess the situation. It was the first 15 minutes was probably one of the most chaotic scenes I've ever been involved with, just because of radio communications. Because you couldn't get hardly from one side of the building to the other in the street. So you had rigs, first responders coming from this side, coming from the west side, east side, and could only go so far. So everybody trying to communicate what was going on each side of the building. Once we got incident command set up and things got a little smoother. And then it was just, doing your assignments that day through different divisions and stuff. And it was just it was a tough day to stay focused once we got inside, knew what was going on, and pretty much had relegated ourselves to what we were going to be dealing with the rest of the day. It was a long day.
And there's really probably not a whole lot of training for an incident that's of that scale, right?
At that time we had just implemented, like I said, the instant command system. So that helped things get organized, as far as strategy and stuff. Um, and as you know, we had a bunch of urban search and rescue USAR teams from around the country come in later that evening and the next day to help. We had just started, probably within the last year before that, training because we wanted to form our own task force eventually. So we had actually started training in that kind of stuff, but I could probably get the same opinion from somebody that's doing USAR stuff for 20 years. There is training, and then there's real life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way we could have set up training scenarios to replicate what we were going to see and what we did see that day. So, we had a little knowledge of lifting and breaching and all that kind of stuff, but not to the extent of what we saw that day, and the fact that it was all within one building, within a one block area. It wasn't spread. It was just so prepared. I would say not totally,
Mm-hmm.
but for the preparation we did have, I've never been more proud to be part of a team than the Oklahoma City Fire Department that day for
Mm-hmm.
what we did.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about the moment that was captured and forever kind of embedded into our minds of you and the little baby.
That was about probably about timeline wise, maybe 30 minutes into the incident after we had uh, done the triage at the daycare I talked about. We were called by the incident commander to do another assignment, and we were actually walking to the south side of the building, and that's when a gentleman named John Avery. Of course, I didn't know him at the time. I've met him since, and we stay in touch. But uh, he was a police officer. Anyway, he came out of. I didn't see him come around a corner, come out of a door. It was just like he appeared, and he said, "I have a critical infant." And 1995, police weren't, and I'm sure they are now. They weren't as trained in first, medical EMS stuff. Fire department's what we did, so we were trained. So I just said, "Here, I'll take her," and he handed me Baylee and Baylee Almon, and I did what we do. I checked for any signs of life, which I didn't find any. She had an open skull fracture, and her throat was full of what I at the time I kept saying insulation, but it was concrete dust and stuff. So I cleared her airway and tried to see what I could do. But she was already passed. And about that time, after I got done assessing her, I looked up and saw an ambulance across the street, and so I took her over there and told the paramedic, same thing Sergeant Avery said to me. I said, "I have a critical infant," and you know when I was holding her, and once I found out about the photo, which was not till like 11 o'clock that night. Once I saw it for the first time the next day, I knew exactly where I was at and what I was doing. I was holding her, looking down at her. The paramedic that I had told I had a critical infant. The ambulance was full. There was three people in the ambulance. There was people on cots all around the ambulance, and he said, "Let me get a blanket." He said, "We're not going to put that baby on the ground." And that's when I was just waiting on him to get the blanket. And I was just looking at her thinking, I had a son at home that was 2 years old at the time. I knew Baylee was relatively close to that age just by looking at her, and come to find it, she turned 1 year old the day before the bombing. And the thoughts going through my head were just, somebody's world is going to be turned upside down today. And that was just what I was thinking, and put myself in that position, and, and not realizing that same sentiment was probably going to be felt 160 something more times around the building that day. And that, looking back, that other firefighters and first responders, police officers, EMS personnel, experienced the same thing, the same feelings. I'm sure it was just, mine was unfortunately, uh, you know, caught on camera. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nothing that, like I said, that nobody else that day didn't experience and feel.
Mm-hmm. So, following in the years following that event, what happened? What what
Um, well,
what
it
was
wasn't
the
until
what
I,
was the what was the impact on you and your family and your people around you?
At first it was I don't know, until it was just kind of a whirlwind. At first, I met Erin Bailey's Baylee Almon's mom the next day. A reporter had called and asked if I wanted to meet her, and my first response was, "No, I don't." I didn't know what her reaction was. I didn't know how she felt, so I just told him, "No, really not interested." And plus, I had to be at work the next morning at 7, the next day, and with everything that was going on. And in my opinion, I just thought it was a reporter trying to, come up with a story to, well, as we was getting ready to hang up, the reporter said, well, that Erin Almon, Beatty's mom, had contacted her and wanted to reach out and try to meet me and Sergeant Avery. And so when she said that, I said, well, then yeah, I'll do it. I felt that that's what I needed to do since she wanted it. And meeting her that day, me and Sergeant Avery talked about today that the amazing thing was, here was a 20-year-old single mom that had just lost her 1-year-old child. And when we met her, she was comforting me and Sergeant Avery. And that's why I've always said I was very fortunate to be um, linked up or tagged, however you want to say it, with Erin. Um, Amazing strength, but she was comforting, me and the big tough first responders. She was the one putting her arm around us and comforting us, and that's all she wanted to do was thank us for getting Baylee out, because she said there were so many other families that didn't were still waiting to find out the results, or still had loved ones unaccounted for. And she said she could tell by looking at the photo that I was a father, and that the way Sergeant Avery was caring, that we were that she was cared for and treated with respect. That's what she just relayed to us. And like I said, while she's telling us all this, we're gone. We're emotionally gone, me and Sergeant Avery, and here she is comforting us. So that always stands out in my mind. But as things went forward, it was I really started struggling with a lot of what I know now to recognize is what was irrational guilt, because I was watching Erin struggle so much. You know, getting to talk to her and getting to know her better. I was the last one. There was that connection. I was the last one that she knew to hold her child, and she didn't get to grieve privately. Not that anybody else did, but she really, really the private grieving was pretty much taken out of her world with all the media. And no matter what she did, there was always, I mean, she had police escorts, she did everything she could do, but it was just still a pretty public event no matter what was going on, Bailey's funeral. And so that was just stuff I carried with me, and that's when I felt this responsibility to her, almost like a big brother little sister deal. She's like 10 or 11 years younger than me. So I think between that and then, uh, and then still working the bombing, still, dealing with fatalities of the bombing, still doing our job. If we weren't working at the bomb site, we were still at the station, responding on calls. And so I think just everything was just started taking its toll on me. And I did pretty good of hiding it for quite a few years. I'd have little bouts of isolation and depression, but I would always find a way to uh, get it all worked out in my head and all that before my wife got home from work, or before I was going to coach the kids in little league or whatever. Uh, and then when I went to the station, I really put on a front, and that's because that environment we work in. And of course, I was hired in 1985, and I was brought up on the job by grizzly, veterans, what true smoke eater, veterans who, and not to say they didn't have emotions and they didn't feel stuff, but they just kind of taught you, hey, as tragic as that is, you can't carry it with you. You got to put it in your back pocket and move on. We got other things to do. And so that was just what we did. It's what I was taught. And it was probably and of course you want to put on that persona so your administrators, your chiefs don't see you struggling. You don't want your fellow guys and girls you work with to see you struggling. We're the helpers. We don't need help. And so that's the front you put on, which I did for probably 7 or 8 years, really, just kind of just having my little private bouts of things. And then,
What
so
kind
like
of
I said, I
toll did
carried,
that play on your life then?
um, well, it really, it was just one of the deals where I thought I had it under control. And I thought, I just, I never really thought, well, someday I'm going to have to talk about this and get it worked out. It's really me. I just thought I got these bad days and I can handle it and I'll just deal with it. I'm no different than, you know, any other firefighter. I figured they were all, it's just what you do. You just, suck it up and go on down the road. And it wasn't until we were putting we decided we were going to put a swimming pool in the backyard, and I was helping people, the guys, bust out concrete. A lot of people don't know it rained the night of the bombing, the early evening, not a heavy downpour, just a little rain. But there was just a smell of the wet concrete dust and everything inside the building. And when we were busting out that concrete out back, it started to rain.
Hmm.
And I caught a smell of wet concrete dust, which I know now is a trigger. I didn't know what a trigger was then. And I remember thinking to myself, man, this smells just like the bombing. I just remember it was just so vivid. And, and I didn't like freak out or I didn't, drop to my knees or anything. It was just a thought that was just kept replaying in my head the whole time I was out there messing with it. And I can pretty much pinpoint that day is when everything started. The bouts of what I call, depression and being wanting to be isolated and, quick. I don't even say quick temper. I always had a little quick temper, but it was more of a I don't know, just anger and about the smallest, littlest things, And it got harder and harder for me to hide it from my family. But one thing I sure did, I sucked it up and I hid it from the fire department for for a long time. And that's just one of them deals where you choose that, pride and ego over. I was more worried about my legacy with the fire department and what my guys and girls I worked with thought about me, and really didn't care that I was pretty much distancing myself and causing harm to my family.
Hmm. How many years was that after the event?
Probably about I was doing math in my head.
Mhm.
Probably about let's see, I carried on pretty well for about 6 or 7 years
Mhm.
until the triggering event,
Okay.
and so about 6 or 7 years, 8 years after that, and then that's like I say, that day is when and things still went along for a couple of more years before I really bottomed out. But that was what I would say would be the start of the
Mhm.
spiral, probably.
And did the agency, and this is no reflection on any agency, but did they do anything to help talk with you guys about that experience?
They did, and I've never and never will fault the Oklahoma City Fire Department or the city of Oklahoma City. They did what we knew to do back then.
Sure.
Uh, we had our own CISM team, and they would send you to, soon, which I've come to learn it's not the best practice, but they would take you, you know, and I hate to be too morbid or gross here, but you could just say, you know, you just help put a person in a body bag. And then they say, okay, time for you to go to debriefing, go talk about it. That's not,
Hmm.
that's not a good time. And, um, but that's what we did because that's
What you
just
knew to
what we did
do.
back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it wasn't any fault. They did what they thought was best and what they knew at the time. And and probably I look back now, I don't know if I kept anybody from getting help, but I would tell my crew, I would say, well, they can make us go in there, but they can't make us talk, you know.
Hmm.
And so I would just tell them, y'all, I'll go in there because it's an order, but I'm not gonna, and then I got to find where we'd go to debriefing, where they had it set up, and I wouldn't even go to the debriefing. I would go find somewhere to get some food that they had set up, or I mean, just you could get there was chiropractors there, there was all sorts of stuff you could, and so I just started avoiding it, and but then there was rumors of you know, uh, John Doe firefighter telling his story to the CISM group, which was our own people, and then somebody in the department finding out that, man, did you hear what firefighter John Doe said, how he was feeling, and so that's when a lot of people got gun shy, I think,
Mm,
about the opening up and telling if they were having any struggles, and I don't know what they would have done at that time. There was really nothing set up other than your local EAP. So I really look back and think I don't know what they'd have done if I'd have said, I'm losing it, but
right.
so that they did what, like I said, they did what they knew at the time,
Hmm.
and that's not a reflection on Oklahoma City Fire Department or the city of Oklahoma City.
Sure, sure. So what flipped the script for you then? I mean, what was that bottom moment that you realized that, hey, I got to get some help?
Um, I couldn't tell you when I realized it. The sad thing is, when I did realize it, I didn't do anything about it. And
Mm,
that's when, I mean, I knew everybody, we know ourselves well enough. I knew things weren't normal. The things I used to enjoy doing, I wasn't enjoying anymore. Um, like I said, the quick gang, I knew, but I didn't do anything about it because of that. I got it here, right here, the stigma that was associated with it. And so this went on, like I say, it, it got worse, like I said, that day after the trigger, and things just kept getting worse around the home front, and my isolation, wanting to separate from my family. And when I say separate, not at that time, I wasn't talking about moving out. It was just talking about I wasn't involved as, by this time I've got two sons instead of just one. By the time I was starting to spiral, and I, I used to take off from the station. I mean, I'd pay somebody, I don't care how much cash, I'm off for 2 hours so I can go watch my boys do their sports, and then I just got to see where I was losing interest in that. The wife would go to work, the kids go to school. I'd hit the couch and I'd lay there all day until I knew they were getting ready to come home, and then I was up being the great happy fella. But my wife seen it. But even back then, she didn't know what to do. If she asked me anything, it would anger me. And of course, then there's tension between us. And when she's asking what's wrong, I'm saying nothing. So she started thinking she's wrong because I was a terrible communicator. And so, if I'm ignoring her and not talking to her, she thinks she's the problem. So things just got really, really bad on the home front. And there's, extramarital affairs stuff going on. And so, my wife came to me, and it was pretty much, you know, I don't know what word she used exactly, but I sum it up with, get help or get out. And well, I'm Chris Fields. Nobody's gonna tell me what to do. I'm fine.
mm,
So if that's what you want, I'll get out. So I moved out, and you know, and even all this going on, I went and got me a little shaggy apartment. Wasn't much, and just was just living my life. Uh, like I was a acting like I was a single man with no kids,
mm,
um, for a while, and just friends reaching out, and my wife still reaching out to try to help me. And it got to a point, Conrad, where I had humiliated, embarrassed, alienated myself from all my friends and family. And it's funny looking back, the people that I hurt the most and kept pushing away were the ones that were trying to help me.
mm,
Um, and the ones that I was clinging to were the ones that were giving me support for what I was doing. Other
mm,
ones that were going through the same hell I was. That's who I wanted to be around. I wanted to get that vote of confidence from them that, hey, you're a grown man, you do what and I had that support, believe it or not. Like I said, I always tell people the best place to get counseling and help on your family life and all that is not sitting in a strip bar at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, drinking beer with a bunch of other guys that are in the same spot you are. You know,
mhm,
we just all encourage each other. And this went on. Me and my wife were separated for 16 months, and it got to be things got so bad that it really wasn't. I wasn't struggling as much with what I thought was the bombing issues. As much now. I'm more depressed and everything now because of the life I was living and the damage I had done to my family and friends. And I thought, well, there's no turning back. I can't go back. And so to fill in that little gap, when I would have these, I'd gone to a doctor and I got, had Xanax, and so to get rest at night, I would have a little drink, take my Xanax. That would let me get to sleep. That would let me, so I could get up and be at work next morning, because I had to get to the fire station to be Chris Field at the fire station, not the guy embarrassing his family living alone in an apartment. I had to be, the guy, the station officer. I had to be the guy that, here I am going to, and still a lot of these people don't know. A lot of people didn't know me and Cheryl were separated. And people are coming to me and I'm offering help on their marriage at the station. Some guy, I'm trying to give him marriage advice about good things he should do to, patch things up with his wife, or, and things like that. And just that facade I had, was, I pulled it off pretty well until, like I said, it got to a point to where it took more drinking and more Xanax to get me through, to help with the anxiety and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, once I had, there was a night came where I had just, like I said, I think me and my wife had a pretty big blow up on the phone. And I think I just got to a point, and she called me out on some things, which I didn't like, which she had every right to do. And so I just got to a point to where I thought I had done so much damage that there was no turning back. And I thought, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be that reminder. I'm going to keep causing grief, because I didn't know how to get out of what I was doing or stop that kind of cycle I was in. So one night I drank and took Xanax with the intent of, not waking up the next morning. And evidently I wasn't successful. And the first thing I did, I was laying there, and when I woke up the next morning, I think it finally hit me, and I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was just, like I said, that facade of living two lifestyles and two separate lives, and having to put on this fake smile, all this stuff all the time, and then going back and living in my little self-wallowing, self-pity depression. I just thought, there's no way this is my purpose in life, and I always preface by saying, I know now I get to go speak to first responders. I get to do certain things, and that's not what I was meaning by this isn't my purpose in life. I knew my purpose was to be a good husband, a good father, and a good friend, which I wasn't. None of those three. I was 0 for 3. And so I knew things had to change. I couldn't live like that anymore. So I picked up the phone. I called my wife and said, hey, I want to come home. And she said, come on. And that's when I knew. I was speaking at a deal in Arizona, and a guy stopped me, and he said, when you reached out, when did you know that reaching out for help had helped you turn the corner and you knew everything was going to be okay? And I said, well, when my wife said, come home, because I knew right then, I thought in my head, okay, to me, that's a God thing, for her to have enough grace to forgive me for the things I had done to her and the family, and let me come back home. And it wasn't all Ozzie and Harriet, for the older crowd listening. I don't know who that is. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't the perfect deal when we got back in. It was a struggle. And, and there was actually a point to where she wasn't as ready as she thought she was, and asked me to, and I moved out again. And I said, you bet, you do what you got to do. And during that time, though, I had gone, I diagnosed PTSD, and had gone for treatment, and came back and went through some EMDR therapy, and that unleashed that was the best thing for me, because I thought, when she told me come back home, and we knew there were some things I had to address and take care of, and in my mind, really, I just thought, okay, if I can get these bombing issues out of my head, some of the sights and the sounds and the smells from that day, the life after the photo and those irrational guilt, if I can get that dealt with, I'm good. And when I went in for EMDR and all that, I found out that the Oklahoma City bombing was really just like a catalyst for my for me to deal with a lot of issues. And my closet was full, my whatever, you know,
Hmm.
the thing you want to use to describe it, pushing things underwater until you can't anymore. My closet was full. That was my overflow. That's when everything just kind of took its toll on me. Um,
So all the
Again,
events that happened 10 years previous or even earlier, kind of were there already, and you didn't
right,
realize that that was impacting you.
right, and by this time, there's been others. I mean, I'm 8, 9 years after the bombing now, so I'm almost 20 years on the job now. And so once I went to NBR and things opened up, I discovered so much about myself, that things I'd never dealt with. One of the things that it's I've even had people say, you really don't need to tell people that. And I'm like, but anyway, at the age of 10, I was molested, and that was part of my irrational guilt too. The guilt for that. Once I unloaded that, and at that point, nobody knew. My parents didn't know. My wife didn't know. So that was when I came out of that session, I knew I had to go, tell them. And but once I got through the therapy and realized, and it's weird to think, you're 50 something years old, 40, late 40s, and you're still thinking that, and I know better, but in your mind, you're still blaming yourself, thinking, okay, you're 10 years old, you knew better. It's just that mentality. And once I got to such a breakthrough, and I started unloading, one of the when I spoke earlier about the mentors on the fire department, one of my mentors was killed in a house fire, while I was on the job.
Mhm.
And I've lost several brothers, uh, some on the job, and other during the time. And so it was just a toll of, at that time, a 20 something year career had finally, everything I'd been pushing down and just dealing with, and what we call suck it up, had finally taken its toll on me. And once I came out of the thing, and it's a work in progress. I still have days sometimes where I sit here and reflect on going, man, I wasted 6 or 7 years, you know, denying that I needed help, and still feel like I should apologize to my wife every day for what I put her through, and the family and friends. But I always like to say, when I did reach out for help, the very people that I was pushing away were the ones that were still there, reaching out to help me. I couldn't find the other brothers that were, still living that lifestyle. I wasn't any good to them anymore because I wasn't going to support what they were doing. So, but that's always stood out in my mind, that the same friends and family that I had pushed away, alienated, humiliated, were the very ones, waiting there to help me and get me to the help I needed. And
Mhm.
like I said, I still have days, but used to, if I felt those days coming on, that's when I would reach for, whatever it was, sex, alcohol, my Xanax, whatever, to get me through that day. Well, uh, now it's just, I just accept it. And if I want to have a day, um, if I need to cry, I'll cry. If I need to, it doesn't control me anymore. And to where I used to say, like I said, and they're so few and far between. But I don't want people to think that, oh, once you go get the help, you'll never have an issue again. That's just not real. And
Mhm.
but learning to
One
cope with,
here a while back, I was talking to someone, and they said that I still have all those experiences. I kind of carry them around in this satchel, and every
mhm.
once in a while, I have to take them out and look at them, but then I put them back in the satchel. And so, is that kind of what you experience? You still have
Yeah,
all these
yeah,
memories and all these things.
right. And like I said, and instead of trying to get them to go away with alcohol or Xanax so I can let the anxiety go, I'm like, that's a good example. I just deal with them. And if that means I'm going to have a cry session, then I'll have a cry session. That means I need to take a couple hours and just veg out, or go to the driving range and hit golf balls, or something. But that's my way of taking them out of that satchel and dealing with them. And I'm still in contact with Erin, Bailey's mom.
Hmm.
And used to, I would come time to try to avoid. If she'd call, I'd look at it and go, I can't do this today, I would just, but now it's just, hey, like I said, it's just, I've just accepted it's always going to be part of me, but I've just learned to through counseling and through other things, just learned a strategy to deal with it.
Hmm. And now you're doing some amazing things. Besides telling your story on venues like this and other
Hmm.
places, you're helping others. So talk a little bit about that and your work there.
Yeah, I am. It is a blessing upon blessings to get to do what I do today, and it is. I get to travel around the country and speak to other first responders, and and one thing I always do is I don't try to say, you're never going to experience trauma. I always promise them you're going to experience trauma, but you don't have to wait till the wheels fall off before you do something about it. Sometimes it's as simple as just talking to somebody. You know, uh, for me, I let it go so long that it was more involved in that. But you don't have to wait till the wheels fall off before you reach out for help. And then I got together with some acquaintances I had met traveling and speaking, and we formed a little group we called Trauma Behind the Badge. Uh, we have there's a website, www.traumabehindthebadge.com. It says the tough conversations. That's what it is. We have a weekly webinar from 7, yeah, for an hour from 7 o'clock Eastern. And we have different guests on there to speak, and we may have a 3-week topic where we cover, certain things. We just finished a 3-week deal where we did family behind the badge, where we talked about the effect on family and kids and stuff. So it's great, and it's real tough conversations. It is like we we probably should put a warning on there because of the conversations we have. It's not always the prettiest language. It's always not always the prettiest topics, but it's just like sitting around the station, at the table at the fire station, or it's like being out back at the police station talking before they, go out on their patrol. It's just real tough love, tough talk. And we always, we have clinicians on there, good friends of ours, that we vet, and because we can talk about the real feelings and say, this is how we felt. This is, just like I've just told y'all, this is how I felt. We have these clinicians on there not to say, we just to say this is maybe why you felt that way. To say these are real emotions, these are normal reactions. And so, like I say, we're down here in Texas right now doing some things, but it's just and these other 3 guys I work with, they're on the website and you read about them, but they are just 2 of the most roughest, brashest people I've ever met. But I've never met anybody with a bigger heart for first responders and military and veterans than these 2 guys. And it's an honor every day I get to work with them.
Hmm. So if I'm a firefighter or a first responder and I'm starting to experience some of the things that you talked about, what should I
Mm-hmm.
do?
Well, it's I guess it kind of depends on where you're at in your department, what your departments are. Fortunately, nowadays most departments have an avenue to reach out. Um, if not, find you have a good friend you can confide in. Sometimes that's all it takes, just getting stuff off your chest. Um, if not, if you find yourself not being the same person you were, and you know, if you used to be a used to guy, if you used to love to fish, you used to love to golf, and all of a sudden you're not doing these things, and then reach out for the help and find a. I would always recommend though finding a clinician that is deals with or counsel deals with trauma and first responders and military. It's just some of them are former first responders and military that now do it, uh, and some of them have been like my counselor Kathy Thomas. That's all she's done for the last 20 something years, 25 years is deal with first responders and military and the trauma. So you have to find somebody that can, you know, feel what you're feeling and relate to it. And so I would just say, number one, if you are having emotions or feelings about certain calls, that it's normal. It's normal. But if you find that it's consuming you, then you need to reach out and get help. And I always tell people it doesn't have to be a national media, huge, traumatic, disastrous event. It's the little things that you do over a 20, 30-year career. It's you take a real quick an example. I got on when I was 20 years old. Uh, uh, I go to my first station the first day. I get there before I'm supposed to be there at 7. I think I'm there at 5:30. Happy and ready to go. They stick me on the rig with the other shift since I'm there so early because they make a call. At that time, I hadn't lost anybody in my life. I've never been around dead people or anything. Well, I get on that rig at 5:45, and by 6 o'clock, I'm sitting here doing compressions on
Hmm.
uh, an elderly person, and to hear and I'm pushing and you've trained for this. You're doing, they tell you you're going to hear the sternum crack, and you're going to hear, but when you do it and you've never done anything like that in your life, I mean, it's a traumatic event. I don't care what you say. Um, it gets a little, I don't want to say easier, but as you do more of it, of course, it becomes, part of the job and you know what you're doing. But if you experience that for the first time, that's a traumatic event. So that's what I'm saying. And, we made calls where we find a person that's passed away in their sleep, and a new guy might be struggling with it. Well, this is an example I actually went through. So I approached the guy. And in my mind at that time, I'm going, okay, he's not going to cut this job. If that right there is affecting him, he's not going to make it. But I wanted to go talk to him because I could tell he was struggling. When I approached him, it was just a bad time for him because when he was 13 years old, he found his grandpa. He walked in and found his grandpa passed away. So we make a call of a 70, 80-year-old gentleman that's passed away in sleep. It just triggered that for him and brought it back. He talked about it. He was fine. He said to him, he'd been on the phone with his wife. So, so little things like that can be traumatic. And we always think it has to be this big, natural or man-made disaster to be a traumatic event. That's so far from the truth.
Hmm. So, what do you think is happening? What should happen with agencies around the country to get everyone to a better place?
Well, it starts, it's all about leadership, man. It starts at the top. And we've experienced some of that down here. Some chiefs that are so far ahead of other departments around the country that aren't scared to tell their own story, what they've been through. And man, all that does is let your guys know that it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. And, that you're not just because you come in and say, hey, you're having trouble sleeping, because if you're a cop, you're not automatically going to lose your gun, lose your shield, or you're not automatically going to be, taken off the rigs, fire station, and everybody's going to know why you're off there. So it's just, it just starts at the top. And, for me, I think the fire service is a little different because we spend 24 hours with our other family. So leadership, when I say leadership, it may not be the actual chief of that department. It may be in my role as a station officer to let guys know. And that's what I did when I came back from treatment. I let them know where I'd been, what I'd done, and where I'm at now. And it opened up some doors for us to, we didn't come back from every call and have this big kumbaya counseling session and everything, but it opened the door for guys to, maybe admit that a call might be struggling with them, or, if they did have stuff going on in their personal life that, hey, I'm okay, but this is going on. So if I'm not, laughing and joking, it just opened up a few doors. So I just always say it just starts at the top in leadership, chiefs, sheriffs, whatever their leader of their department is, and the city administration, all that is just needs to get involved. And yeah, we back the blue, we back the red, we back. Well, let's see how you really back them, because I'll always say in the fire service, especially, I don't know law enforcement. I know a bunch of law enforcement people, but I know in the fire service, you come out of a house fire and break a leg, whatever. Um, but you get two people out, you break a leg. You are lauded. You're a hero. You've done this, you've done that. While you're at home laid up, people are checking on you, taking care of you. And unfortunately, in the fire service today, occupational cancer is such a huge huge thing to deal with. And again, I don't. This all should be done too because we're a family. We take care of each other. But if you get cancer, where you've got more support, you've got to tell people to quit coming around, quit checking, quit. But if they find out it's a mental health issue, it is hands off,
Mm.
and that's from your people you work with, city people. That is a they think that's a separate issue, and we just need to stay away. That is, that's so wrong, and that's the stigma that comes with it. It's a wound you can't see. You know,
Mhm.
you can't see the effects chemo and all that's taken on like you can with cancer. You can't see the surgery, the scars, the broken leg, all that. It's up here, and that's something I see changing though, and I see it changing even when we're preparing rookies. It used to be all physical. We got to get you in shape so you can be on a calendar. You got to be in shape. But we never trained this to be in shape. But I see a change. A shift in that across the country.
Boy, I think that is so important for that training to start, on the first day when they're
Mm-hmm.
recruits, and when they're, not only you have to do the physical stuff, but you got to do the mental training, right? I
Right,
mean,
right, and
because if this isn't healthy, the rest of it is going to suffer.
yes, and focus. And we were just talking about this last night. A deal how we focus on the new recruits, the guys who are on the job, and ones we often forget. And I'm talking firefighters, law enforcement, military, veterans, dispatchers, everything. We focus on before they start the job and after, but we've lost sight of the retirees.
Hmm.
That one of the guys I work with down here, Chris Scallon, just 2 weeks ago, one of his friends, a retiree, committed suicide.
Wow.
We forget that because there's that shift from, um, your job. We get caught up and we think that's the job is who we are, and it's not. The job is what we do, but that's a tough transition from that that you were in a leadership role or the lifestyle you live as a firefighter, and then now you're sitting there, your wife's telling you, hey, pick up extra cucumbers while you're at the store. That's your big thing of the day. That's a tough adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't feel, you know, I don't know. I just say it's just we get caught up in thinking that the job we do is who we are, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It's just the job we do. Real quick, one of the other gentlemen here, he said he got so addicted to the chaos.
Hmm.
He's a SWAT guy, DEA agent. He got so addicted to the chaos of the job that when he went home and there was nothing, he said he had to create chaos
Mm-hmm.
to feel, like he was a functioning human being. So we've got to turn a little shift to focus too on the retirement when people are retiring.
Do you think a little bit, technology, we're all connected and we have, apps on our phones that tell us, what's happening in the community, and when
Mm-hmm.
the tones go off, they go off here, right? And do you think
Yeah,
that kind of contributes to that sense of loss? Because okay, the thing goes off and, oh, I'm not responding now.
yeah, I think it does, and you know, um, a good friend of ours we were just talking about earlier. I said was with us yesterday and left. Brad, that was one of his things, that sense of not being there. That you feel like you should be there, you should, and maybe this wouldn't happen if you'd have been there. When he lost his partner, he wasn't on the call, and he thought I should have been there. That was one of his struggles, and that's the same thing when you see a big story on the news going, oh man, I should have. That's what I tell people. I would probably, if they'd let me, I'd go back and fight a couple of more house fires just for free. If they would let me. But it's that sense of it's a sense of loss. You can stay in contact with some of the guys that are still on the job for a while, but then you're just a separate group now. So it is it's a tough adjustment, and but it's one we need to focus on too. Is like I said, the retirees.
Hmm. Well, Chris, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I could talk to you for a long time, but we don't have that much time on this program today. But I want to say thank you for your service, thank you for the work you're doing, and for the publicity you're doing to help other first responders, and to help our communities, understand those things. And so I just want to say, for me, thank you for
Well,
that.
and I appreciate that, and like I say, it's an honor to do stuff like this, and to you, man. Thank you for PTSD 911 documentary. It's things like this that are going to bring the awareness to not just the fire service, law enforcement. We know it's a problem,
Hmm.
but to bring it to the community and let them know it's a problem, and that to do away with the stigma. And I know it sounds so cliche, but to recognize that it's okay not to be okay. It's a natural human emotion and reaction. So more things like that that get out there are going to do nothing but help. So again, I thank you 100 times over for the work you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Well, folks, we've been talking with Chris Fields. He's a retired firefighter from Oklahoma City, and now he's with Trauma Behind the Badge and doing important work around the country in helping other first responders deal with the traumas that they deal with oftentimes on a daily basis. And Chris, it's been a real pleasure having you on the program. If you stick around after we sign off here, we'll do a little wrap up. And
Okay.
but again, thank you for being on the show today.
All right. Thank you.
So, yep. So you have been watching First Responder Friday. My name is Conrad Weaver, and I want to say next week we have another guest on, and I want to give you a sneak peek on that. Next week I have the one and only Ricardo Martinez is going to be on. He is with Within the Trenches, and he is now the CEO of that company and doing amazing work in the 911 community. You can see his podcasts and his shows on Facebook and around the internet. And so please join us next week on Friday for First Responder Friday. Ricardo Martinez is going to be here and talking about the things that he does. That he does. You have been watching First Responder Friday. Again, my name is Conrad Weaver. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week. Have a great day.